All right, we are going to just quickly review multiplying, and I want you to practice multiplying these three out. So remember, first term times everything, second term times everything, and add up your like terms. Okay, when you finish, hit continue, and you'll see if your answers match up. Okay, so there was a reason that I had to do these three in particular. If you'll notice, the first term and last term have the same number, and they're both factors of 36. If I say 12 times 3, I get 36 on all three of these, even if it's negative 36. And then the middle term, the middle two terms are also factors of 36. 18 times 2 is 36. Negative 18 and negative 2 is 36. And then whatever they add to comes to the middle. And so the point of today's lesson is to be able to work backwards, which we call factoring. You're going to take this trinomial and go backwards to the two binomials. And part of, I have a process for doing this, but why do we do it the way we do? And so I have all 8 problems worked out for you. And I want you to list the factors of 30. And anytime you list your factors, I want you to go in order. And I need you to know that factors are two numbers that multiply to give you that number, but they could be two positives or two negatives. So if I want a positive 30, I need two positive numbers or two negative numbers. So 1 and 30, but that also means negative 1 and negative 30. 2 and 15, which means negative 2 and negative 15. 3 and 10, or negative 3 and negative 10. 5 and 6, or negative 5 and negative 6. And what happens here is if I were to multiply the first term by the last term, so 2 and 15, I would get 30 every time. 15, 2, 15, 2. Okay. But if I take my two factors and I add them together, right, the sum means I add, then I get 31, or negative 31, or 17, negative 17. Here's 13, negative 13. 11 and negative 11. And if you'll notice, the middle term is one of the sums, right? 17, negative 13, 31, positive 13, negative 17, and so on, okay? So basically, we want to work backwards. In order to do so, we need to find factors of this term times this term, which gives me 30x squared, that add to the middle term, okay? So there's a couple steps that we're going to talk about today. We're not going to factor it all the way through. We're just going to do what I call the hard part, which is filling in this magic x. And first, we're always going to factor out a greatest common factor. So that's why we practiced that earlier. So number 1, I have 3x squared minus 28x plus 9. My smallest number is 3. Does 3 go into 28? No. So that means I no longer have a greatest common factor. So this is what I'm working with. We have a quadratic function, which we haven't talked about yet, but the form for that is ax squared plus bx plus c. And basically, we're going to take our first term and our last term, and we're going to fill in this magic x by doing the following. It says the top term is the first term times the last term. So if I take my first term times my last term, I get 27x squared. And then we take the middle term and we move it to the bottom. So that gets dropped down, negative 28x. And so here, I need to find factors of the top number that add to the bottom number. So on your scratch paper, factors of 27 that add to negative 28. Well, my factors of 27 are 1 and 27, or negative 1 and negative 27. And instantly right there I can see that this would be 28, but this would be negative 28. Okay, if I were to write out the rest of them, it's just 3 and 9 and negative 3 and negative 9, which gives me 12 and negative 12. And I specifically want these two because they add to negative 28. And we're going to put them on the sides of the x. So negative 1x, negative 27x. And this is actually the hardest part about factoring. And so we're going to stop right there, and I'm going to show you the rest of it later. And we're just going to keep on practicing. Being able to fill in that x is the most important part. On number 2, I have to, again, check for a greatest common factor. 6 doesn't go into 33, but 3 goes into 6, 3 goes into 33, and 3 goes into 42. So I'm going to pull out the 3. I'm going to divide, and I get 2x squared. Divide by 3 again, I get negative 11x. And I divide by 3, and my mind is blanking, and I get positive 14. So I want to use just this information. We'll come back to what we'll do with that 3 later. But right now, we're going to take the first term times the last term. So my new first term times my new last term. 2x squared times 14 is 28x squared. Then we move the middle term to the bottom, minus 11x. Okay? So take your scratch paper, and we're finding factors of 28 that add to negative 11. So 1 and 28, negative 1, negative 28. 2 and 14, negative 2, negative 14. And 4 and 7, and negative 4 and negative 7. Those are all your factors, and if we add them up, we get 29, negative 29, 16, negative 16, 11, and negative 11. So there is what I'm looking for, negative 4 and negative 7, and those go on the sides of my x. And now make sure you put an x with them, and we'll talk about why later. So right now, I just need you to be able to fill in the x. Okay. Number 3, I have a 5. What's my smallest number? It does go into 30 and 40, so I'm going to pull out a 5. What's left is x squared plus 6x plus 8. And now we're going to multiply first term times last term, and I get 8x squared. Middle term goes to the bottom. So this time you are finding factors of 8 that add to 6. So factors of 8 that add to 6. Well, my only factors are 1 and 6, negative 1, negative 6, 2 and 3, negative 2, negative 3. So, oh, sorry, I goofed. Those are factors of 6. I want the factors of 8. So that would be 1 and 8, negative 1, negative 8, 2 and 4, negative 2, negative 4. So this right here adds to negative 6, positive 6, negative 9, positive 9. So I want 2 and 4. So 2x, 4x. Okay, you turn your paper over. I want you to try number 4, number 7, number 10, 11, and 12. All right? So right now, you are trying 4, 7, 10, 11, 12. All right, so now we're going to come back and we're going to look at number 5. And again, we're doing the same thing. There's no greatest common factor because this is a 1 here, so I can't pull anything out. But I still need to follow the process, which means I take my first term, 2x squared, times my last term, negative 10. And that gives me negative 20x squared. Take your middle term and move it to the bottom, so negative 1x. Up to this point, all of our top numbers have been positive. We still do the same process for if I have a negative number, but I wanted to show you what the factors look like because sometimes they're a little different. So I need a factors of negative 20 that add to negative 1. So factors of negative 20. Well, if I want a negative number, that means I need a positive number and a negative number. So 1 and negative 20, or negative 1 and positive 20. 2 and negative 10, or negative 2 and positive 10. 4 and negative 5, or negative 4 and positive 5. And so now we add them together still. And we would get negative 19, positive 19, negative 8, positive 8, negative 1, positive 1. And so I'm looking for the ones that added to negative 1, so that's right here. 4 and negative 5. So 4x, negative 5x. Okay. All right, you're going to try the rest of the page. I will tell you that there is a greatest common factor that you need to pull out on number 6 and a greatest common factor on number 8.